What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to episode 74 of the Silver and Gold podcast. I'm Josh.
And I'm Mike.
And today we are going to be updating you guys on what the 49ers and what the Raiders have been, kind of up to in free agency. I know we haven't been live in a couple weeks, but we've kind of given the teams time to really, sign guys and sort of paint a better picture on what the team or what both teams will need going into the draft. So I guess we'll jump right in with the 49ers free agency updates. So I'm going to go ahead and just kind of go through the players that they have lost first, and then I'll go through the players that they signed. But, in terms of players that they lost, Brandon Allen did go to the Tennessee Titans. Aaron Banks signed, with the Green Bay Packers. Joshua Dobbs signed with the New England Patriots. John Feliciano retired. Dre Greenlaw and Talanoa Hufanga both signed with the Broncos. Javon Hargrave signed with the Minnesota Vikings. Elijah Mitchell went to the Chiefs. Jalen Moore signed with the Kansas City Chiefs as well. And Eric Sobert went to the Seahawks. Charvarius Ward went to the Colts. Isaac Yiadom to the Saints. And Rock Ya-Sin to the Detroit Lions. So now let's talk about the players that the 49ers did end up signing. Because, it really wasn't a lot of big-name guys. But just to list them off, cornerback Saron Neal, he was from the Dolphins. Quarterback Mac Jones. Tight end Luke Farrell. Wide receiver Demarcus Robinson. Trey Brown, the cornerback from the Seahawks. Luke Gifford from the Titans. Safety Richie Grant. Cornerback Jason Pinnock. And long snapper John Weeks. So I kind of took notes over like the past couple weeks, especially there's a couple of things that have kind of happened that have stood out to me more than others. And I guess the most interesting thing to me in terms of players that they signed has to be the Mac Jones signing, because all the talk has been about the Brock Purdy contract and whether or not the 49ers are going to extend him, when they're going to extend him. Is he going to be a top paid player? And, Mac Jones signed to a 2-year deal. And typically when the 49ers have signed backup quarterbacks, it's been to 1-year deals. We saw that with, Josh Dobbs this past year. So, Mac Jones signing, will he be the starter? He could if Brock Purdy decides to hold out. If Purdy decides he wants to be a top paid player, he doesn't want to risk getting injured and doesn't want to play without the security of that contract, then yeah, Mac Jones would, I guess, theoretically be the starter. Does this give the 49ers more leverage? I personally think so. I think if Purdy decides to hold out, he could lose his job to Mac Jones if Mac Jones, steps in there and plays well. Like, it would be a situation like in terms of if Mac Jones is dealing in Kyle's system, how could you pull him out if the team is doing well? And then since that is a real possibility, what would I guess if you're another team that would possibly be trying to write Brock Purdy a massive check, would it cause you to hesitate a little bit because another quarterback is stepping into the 49ers team, into Shanahan's system and playing well? Does that, I feel like it kind of dilutes what exactly Brock offers to the 49ers and could change how other teams view him. What do you think about that, Mike?
Well, I mean, this Brock Purdy contract's definitely going to be an interesting topic for the remainder of this offseason, and really it's going to get really interesting, coming out of the draft. Not that I think that the Niners are going to draft anybody, although they could. Certainly not high. There's not going to be anybody worth taking unless Shadur falls to 11, but I don't see them. That wouldn't make any sense. If you're already in contract negotiations, why would you do that? I see Mac Jones as a nice buffer. I don't think I agree and disagree on the idea that he changes the negotiation tactics, or however you put it, makes it. What was the term that you said for Brock Purdy?
I said it gives the 49ers a little bit more leverage, because I think that, they're already deciding to cut back on spending. And I mean, they have an easy schedule. They're probably going to make the playoffs regardless of if it's Mac Jones or Purdy. Just kind of the way, we saw Jimmy Garoppolo go to a Super Bowl with the 49ers.
Right. I mean, Mac Jones is definitely very back and forth. Now, if he could play well under Shanahan, which is very possible, if he could become a more consistent quarterback under Shanahan, should he get starts, sure. But I wouldn't be so confident. I do think that Mac Jones is a great signing for a backup quarterback, especially a guy who seemingly ever since he was in the draft, 5 years, 6 years ago, probably 6 years ago, 5 years ago, everybody was saying he fits Shanahan so well.
I think Shanahan was interested in him.
Yeah, that was the word. That was the reporting on it for sure. And he also kind of came off of this more as the more NFL ready quarterback in that draft compared to some of those other guys, Fields, Lance, right? Besides Trevor Lawrence, really. But I think, to say that signing Mac Jones to a 2-year deal gives you leverage on the Niners is kind of assuming that he could play well. And that's not a guarantee, And I think that's in reverse. That's also still leverage for Purdy. I still think Purdy is the guy for them, having Mac Jones on the roster, especially for 2 years, isn't leverage against Purdy until Mac Jones starts playing. Or practicing. So until we hit training camp, I don't think it's leverage. I just think it's a wise move because you need a backup regardless. And having him for multiple years is nice because, hey, we've seen freakier things happen in the Niners quarterback room in the past 6 years where we think this guy's going to start and then something happens and now the backup's starting. So if you have, Mac Jones under contract on a cheap deal, it's just wise whether or not you sign Purdy. But I'd say everybody's assumption right now is Purdy's going to get signed. It's just a matter of how much and when.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just think, there's the interest for Mac Jones kind of, goes back to the 2021 draft where, I heard Shanahan talk about it. I was fully plugged in on that because I think I told you, Mike, I said, man, the 49ers better get that draft pick right. And boy, did they. They won multiple Super Bowls with the quarterback that they ended up drafting. No, they got 4 games out of the quarterback they ended up drafting. They actually 1 game for each draft pick used, but let me kind of I've heard, and these are just I guess rumors or whatever, but is it Mick Lombardi, the dad?
That is, I believe, the offensive coordinator for your team.
Okay.
Mike
Is it
Lombardi.
Michael? Yeah, Michael Lombardi.
Yeah, Michael. Yeah.
Michael Lombardi holds firm that Mac Jones was the pick until the very last second. Like, Shanahan wanted Mac Jones. I think I've heard that he's still adamant that Mac Jones was going to be the pick.
Yeah. I know you
how
and
it
I
ended
talked
up
about,
being Trey Lance, I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I think looking at Trey Lance, the prospect, versus Mac Jones, the prospect, one has much higher upside, but the other had a much higher floor, that guy being Mac Jones. And that's why he has a job right now. And technically speaking, Trey Lance doesn't. But, in the right circumstance, maybe Trey Lance works out. We'll see. But I know when the Niners signed Mac Jones, you and I talked about it. And, I'm not trying to underscore the signing. Like, the intrigue is there. I can absolutely see the scenario where Mac Jones, whether it's because of, contract negotiations ongoing and Brock Purdy's holding out, or because, knock on wood, Brock Purdy gets hurt. I could see it where Mac Jones goes out there and just game manages the way that Shanahan wants a quarterback to game manage under his offense. And suddenly, depending on if you sign Purdy to a long-term deal, we can get it done with this really cheap quarterback. Maybe we should trade Purdy for a first-round pick or whatever you can get for him. Run it with Mac Jones, and then in a couple of years, draft a quarterback. I can absolutely see it. It's just the likelihood is very low because of where they're at right now with Purdy and trying to get a deal done. But again, I've seen freaky things happen in that quarterback room, so it adds a lot of intrigue.
Yeah, what was Mac Jones' contract number again? Also,
wasn't it like 8, like 4 per year?
No,
I'm probably thinking of Winston, Jameis.
Okay, I want to be very clear. By the way, is Brock Purdy still the better quarterback? Yes, that's not a question in my mind. I think Brock Purdy's better, but I guess where I'm kind of optimistic about Mac Jones is, one, the cheap contract, but two, who has Mac Jones really had to throw to in his career? Jacoby Myers, and then just recently Christian Kirk, Evan Engram, and Brian Thomas Jr. I mean, Brian Thomas Jr. is nice, but Mac Jones was the backup. Like, that was Trevor Lawrence's team.
Right.
So I don't know. I feel like if you give him George Kittle, Ricky Pearsall's kind of started coming into his own at the end. Brandon Ayuk, if he was healthy, and you give him theoretically a healthy Christian McCaffrey, I feel like you could run, a decent offense. I mean, we saw Sam Darnold go from a nobody in the NFL, like just a loser, to now he's the starting quarterback of the division rival Seattle Seahawks because he went 14-3 on the Minnesota Vikings in a tough division, right? I think that sometimes quarterbacks just need to be in the right place. And like, also, who are Mac Jones's coordinators? Matt Patricia? Come on.
That's what I was going to say is, the upgrades at the positions around him, the, receivers and hopefully the run game, all being upgrades for him should he start for the Niners at all. That's big enough. But you're also talking about an offensive coordinator upgrade, and potentially, I think we've had interesting opinions on whether Shanahan can develop a quarterback, but perhaps he can develop well under the Shanahan scheme.
I think that Shanahan doesn't do well in developing quarterbacks. That's kind of been my opinion. But I do think that Shanahan gets the most out of quarterbacks, but doesn't do it. I don't think that he does a good job of improving their play long term, but rather in the short term, they can excel in his system, if that makes sense. But if you remove them from the system, like Jimmy Garoppolo, Raiders starting quarterback, he got benched within a couple weeks. You know what I mean? Jimmy Garoppolo, I wouldn't say was a better quarterback after being through Shanahan's system, but he was a better quarterback when he was in Shanahan's system. I hope that makes sense. You know what I mean? It's like maximizing versus improving. And I think Shanahan maximizes, or more so maximizes than improves. In terms of the contract, Mac Jones signed a 2-year, $8.41 million contract with the San Francisco 49ers, including $2.14 million signing bonus and 4.75 guaranteed. So the average annual salary is $4.2 million. So if it came down to, I just realized I lost Mike. If it came down to it, I think that I would rather have Mac Jones at. I would take Mac Jones at $4 million per year rather than Brock Purdy at closer to $60 million. I think that you could probably put together a better team if you just invest that money in the offensive line, maybe another receiver. But I mean, we'll see what the 49ers want to do. I think the Mac Jones signing kind of gives them options into, you don't have to pay Brock Purdy top of the line money. Is Mac Jones one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL? No, absolutely not. And he's proven that he's not on the Patriots, and he's proven that he's not on the Jacksonville Jaguars. My point is that I think that he would be serviceable on the 49ers, and they shouldn't fully commit to Brock Purdy if they're not in love with him, and the fact that they haven't, that they're having trouble in the negotiations should tell you exactly how they feel, because they can say that Brock Purdy is the franchise quarterback, but if they're not, if they haven't extended him right now, why not? Is he not good enough? You're telling me he's good enough. Is there not money? You haven't spent a lot this free agency period. I don't know. I tend to think that maybe they're kind of trying to hedge their bets a little bit. But Mac Jones wasn't the only player that, that got picked. But overall, I think it's a good move because he's a former first-round pick. He's got a good arm. And I think that he could run Kyle Shanahan's system at a decent level. And, assuming that Brock Purdy still the starter and doesn't hold out, I will say, because it is still Brock's team. I'm not saying it's Mac Jones's team. I know some of you might have clicked because of the thumbnail. I thought it was funny, to put the halo on Mac Jones like that. It's pretty funny, in my opinion. But if Brock Purdy does miss time, whether it be due to an injury, the 49ers have been in worse hands in the past. And I also think, like, when it comes to the negotiations, it puts a little bit more pressure on Brock Purdy because, he could lose his job. Like I said, if Mac Jones comes in and plays well, which is a real possibility, how could you as a coach go to another quarterback? It's like, I feel like it's happened. They could go back to Brock Purdy. But, typically coaches like to ride the hot hand. And I'm not saying there's no cases where they don't, but, we would really have to see how the 49ers approach it from a quarterback standpoint. Because I know running back is a little bit different. But we did see a couple years ago, and this is just an example, Raheem Mostert towards the end of the 2019 season was the hot hand at running back. And, so they rode him all the way to the Super Bowl, right? When it comes to quarterback, if the team's already getting adjusted to one quarterback and then another one comes back in, it can get weird. And we saw that in 2021. So, yeah. Other things that happened, Jordan Mason got traded to the Vikings. Was it a good move? I would say yes and no. Yes, in the sense that the 49ers are taking this year. They've already told us that they're going to take this year to rebuild. And in my literal experience of watching football, literally my entire life, running backs are a dime a dozen. So you can always get other running backs. And Jordan Mason, I think, was an undrafted player anyway, and they turned him into draft capital. In terms of where this isn't a good move, it's in the sense that Jordan Mason might have been their best running back if CMC is not healthy, and he's a good player. And typically when you're trading away good players, it's not a good thing, but I think, running backs they're not great forever. So the 49ers could potentially fill another hole with the draft pick that they got. And I think they also moved up and around, almost a whole round. Let me see. I see some of the comments trickling in. I am going to take some comments and then I'll get back to other notable free agency stuff. Papa J says, "What up, Josh and Mike?" I don't know where Mike went, but what up, Papa J? Let's see. PS says, "Very good point on my Mac Jones." So, my Mac Jones rant, it went on for a little long, but I think it's a good thing. Honestly, even if he never touches the field, I think it's a good thing. You could see possibly it could aid in the contract negotiations. I know Mike doesn't think so, but the 49ers won't feel pressured to have to pay Brock top dollar if they have a quarterback that they at least feel comfortable with, before. Also, here's what happened. Shout out to Paulina. She says Michael's laptop had to update and he will be back shortly. So I didn't know what's going on. Also, I can't even check my phone to see if Mike was texting me because the show had to start a couple minutes after when we said it would, because I was trying to get my normal camera that I use to work, but right now I'm using my phone as my camera. So that's why if I look a little bit more crisp today, it's because of that. Papa J says, sometimes physical advantages don't outweigh mental advantages. Brock Purdy is a much better game manager. I agree. And I'm not saying that Brock Purdy isn't a better quarterback than Mac Jones, because Brock Purdy is. He's shown it. But I think Mac Jones has the better, he's got the better arm. And I know that that's a physical advantage. But I think that if Jimmy Garoppolo could look decent in this offense, I think a guy like Mac Jones can look more than decent, and Brock has looked really good in this offense. The 2023 season, honestly, I don't think Brock gets enough credit for how well he performed in 2023, but in 2024, late in games, I think that Brock Purdy doesn't get enough criticism for late game interceptions and, missing some key throws in, like the Rams game. He played pretty poorly, not being able to play in poor weather, which happens late in the season, especially for a team that plays outdoors. I've noticed it's been raining a lot more lately in California the past couple years. We're not necessarily in a drought anymore. And yeah, I don't know. Brock is the better quarterback, but is he 55? Is he $50 to $55 million more worth Mac Jones? I don't know. I don't think so. So, is he better? Yeah. That much better? I guess we'll see. Papa J says, you think they're going to get Cam Scatabo? Honestly, it's tough. I'm not a good draft guy. This is where Mike, would excel. But, Scatabo, I think is, he's good, but I don't know how it'll translate to the NFL. I don't watch college football a lot. I have seen highlights on Scatabo, but from what I could tell, I mean, he's pretty good. He looks like a stud, but Mike, what do you think of Cam Scatabo?
Oh, I like him. I think he's very interesting.
Papa J says, "What if Brock does does very well, and they don't pay him this year, and the price goes up even higher next year? Then you know what? If Brock does play very well this year, then you probably should pay him."
Yeah, and the way that everybody will feel is, oh, typical Niners. They weren't a year ahead of it.
Yeah, but
because if he goes out there, like the rumors I've seen back and forth, I've seen Grant Cohn and others saying different numbers, right? As high as, oh, he's looking for 60 million. I've definitely seen that tweeted. If he goes out there and I don't even think he needs to go all pro, but gets them to the NFC Championship, next year we might be looking at $60 million. Whereas this year it might be more in line with 50.
Okay, you said, oh, typical Niners in terms of them, signing him late, right? Doing it too late.
Yeah.
I look at it the other way. If they do sign him, if they do sign him now and he underperforms and doesn't live up to his contract, then I look at it as, oh, typical Niners. It's another one of those paying players for past performances rather than what they're going to do for you in the future. You know what I mean? How many times do we have to see it where, we saw it with Debo, we saw it with Eric Armstead. Huh? You all right? Lagging a little bit? Mike?
Yeah, can you see me?
Yeah, I can see you, and I can hear you.
Can you see me?
Yeah, I can see you.
Okay. I'm listening.
Okay. Yeah, we saw it with Debo. We saw it with Eric Armstead. I guess Javon Hargrave, he wasn't extended, but he's another player that the 49ers invested a lot of money in and didn't necessarily get the results that they were looking for out of. Brandon Ayuk, they gave that massive contract to. He didn't live up to it. Even Nick Bosa hasn't necessarily been the same than he was right before they extended him. So, I wouldn't say Nick Bosa is as severe as the other players that I named, like, Armstead and Debo, but it's they have a pattern of, I guess, not wasting money, but getting less than what they pay for out of players. Papa J does agree with you, though, that the perception would be that the 49ers would have extended pretty late. But going back to other moves that the 49ers have made, the 49ers also let go of long snapper Tabor Pepper. And it just makes me think, like, why would they do that? Before Tabor Pepper came in, they were having a lot of issues with their former long snapper, Kyle Nelson. I think that's what his name was. And, Tabor Pepper came in. He wouldn't make mistakes. So I'm trying to piece together why. Was it his coverage? Was he not good in punt coverage? Was it the Debo incident? Tabor Pepper, in my opinion, was in the right, defending Jake Moody from Debo, and Debo put his hands on him. Kyle Shanahan took, Debo's side in that, but now they're both gone. So is it just that the new special teams coordinator, Brant Boyer, just prefers 39-year-old John Weeks? I just don't get it. The 49ers say they're trying to get younger, and then they let go of Tabor Pepper and replace him with somebody who's going to be 40 pretty soon. I feel bad for John Weeks in the sense that if he ever misses a snap, everybody's going to just bring up how much they miss Tabor Pepper. It's going to be the whole Jake Moody thing all over again, where every time Jake Moody misses a kick, everybody brings up Robbie Gould. It just inevitably happens. The other move that I kind of don't understand is that Kyle Juszczyk was cut, and then the 49ers, I guess, told him to find a market for himself, and then they brought him back anyway. They extended him, so the 49ers effectively just created dead cap space and got the guy that they should have just kept if they really wanted him. I don't know. I don't understand. They could have just restructured his deal. It doesn't make sense. What led to the change of heart? And why was he expendable? And then why was it important to bring him back? Just doesn't make sense. Everything about it just seemed weird and off to me. And, as a fan, I still appreciate him because he's the longest tenured player, on the 49ers. Well, maybe not technically now, but, there's the other side of me that understands he has regressed. He's not the same run blocker that he was before. And the 49ers have struggled. They struggled last season to run the ball in the red zone. I don't see how they couldn't have found a player to replace him. So, like I said, he's not the same player as before. It felt weird. Felt like, why does Shanahan have to have a fullback? Why can't they just, line up with two tight ends? Especially since they paid a lot of money to Luke Farrell, one of the players that I brought up earlier. I'm not sure, but I did want to touch base on Dre Greenlaw. Dre Greenlaw probably in particular, but I mentioned he and Hufanga both went and signed deals with the Broncos, but both were good 49ers, especially Dre Greenlaw. The report is that the 49ers they tried to get Greenlaw to re-sign at the last minute, but then he just opted to go to Denver anyway, even though I think the 49ers technically outbid the Broncos in the end. I think Greenlaw, he could have probably been a little bit insulted that the 49ers just weren't so forward with wanting him back, and he had to go find a deal from another team. And then they're like, oh, wait, no, actually, we'll pay you a little bit more, rather than, them kind of showing interest right up front. But, I think also too, he wanted to be the top linebacker, and maybe he didn't want to just be in Fred Warner's shadow his entire career. So personally, I'm okay with them moving on from Dre Greenlaw. I'm not saying he's not a good player, because he really is, when he's healthy. But it's more of, I'm fine with not risking a big contract with a player who has major health concerns. Sure, he might be healthy and he changes the defense when he is healthy, but an Achilles tear, it's a serious injury, right? It's career changing for most players who suffer Achilles tears, right? They almost never come back the same. He came back and looked great, but he could barely walk, after the first game that he came back. I think we all remember, he came back, the 49ers defense looked different. But then he was struggling, limping off the field after that. And then the next week, he couldn't even finish the following game. So I personally think if the 49ers are trying to reset and build a new core, you have to make difficult decisions and lose some people along the way. And personally, I'm fine with it, even though it was kind of Greenlaw's decision rather than the Niners. But it just happens. Sometimes you just lose players, and not taking a risk with a guy who already has the health concerns. I'm fine with it, because It's not like the 49ers they're not actively selling to the fans that they're trying to win the Super Bowl this year. They're actively selling to the fans that they're rebuilding, So it's not like my expectations just got shattered with Greenlaw leaving. But the other notable players that the 49ers lost are Aaron Banks, who was the starting left guard. He was solid, but really regressed this past season. Jalen Moore was a solid swing tackle, but he got paid pretty nicely by Kansas City, and the Niners weren't going to match that. Charvarius Ward, I don't think that he was going to re-sign anyway because just bad memories, and my thoughts and prayers are still out to him and his family. And then Javon Hargrave, he just wasn't the right fit to begin with. So, I mean, that's pretty much it for for free agency and what the 49ers have accomplished, or I guess the lack thereof of accomplishments. Mike, what's your big takeaway? I feel like you've been wanting to jump in.
Yeah, I for one, my laptop needed to get updated right in the middle of the podcast. That was awesome. It just randomly kicked me off my AirPods and I couldn't reconnect them. So that was fun. And then just now I started lagging, 5 minutes ago, because Discord is an app on my laptop, and every time that I restart my laptop, it takes like 5 whole minutes for it to boot up. And I could tell it was causing me to lag, so I just fucking uninstalled that bitch. So here we are. We're no longer lagging anymore. And two things I want to talk about. One, with the Purdy thing, the Purdy contract, I agree with you. There's definitely two sides to that of, on one side, if you're too late, you're going to have to pay up more if he plays good. And if you're too early, there's the possibility that suddenly he doesn't play as good as he ever played before. And no matter what, you're overpaying him, So that's the unfortunate bet that you have to make. Right off the bat, the first person that comes to mind is Brandon Ayuk because of his injury, but that's kind of a freak thing. I think when they signed him to that deal, they expected him to be a top 10 to 15 receiver, if not higher. And he gets a major knee injury, and suddenly it's like, oh man, we have a lot of doubts here. 1 year, and there's all these rumors about, are the Niners going to trade him before his, first major roster bonus kicks in, which they're not, because frankly, they'd have to send picks with him just to get a team to take that fucking contract on. So, and that's unfortunate, but that's kind of the name of the game with these contracts. And sometimes it works out in the player's favor, and a lot of the times it doesn't. So it's just a matter of how it plays. But if Purdy's serious, and if Purdy's a good starting quarterback, which I think he is, I feel like the likelihood is better than not, barring injury, that he will stay pretty consistent with what he has been. And it's not like he's just going to suddenly fall off, which is why my mind goes to, if they plan on signing him to a major deal, they should do it now while it's still hopefully perhaps less than $55 million per year. Because if he does go out there, takes them to the playoffs, has a healthy year, statistically is better than last year, which I think is pretty possible, because until last season, he seemed like a guy who very much is better than what we saw last year. If he gets back to that, at that point, we might have other guys getting re-signed and getting the bar closer to 60 million, like I was saying. And at that point, it's just like, well, is he worth it? Even at his best, is he worth that? I don't know. I don't know for this team, But this team is still probably trying to win, so maybe it is worth it. And then, like you just said, on the moves that the Niners are making, kind of seems like the rebuilding. I wouldn't necessarily say that they're rebuilding, because if they were rebuilding, they would have traded Purdy by now. I think that they're just retooling, and I think that's the wise move. And part of that is something that the Raiders have kind of done too, in that they let their major free agents walk, and what do they get in return? They're getting comp picks. Not this year, but next year. So all those guys that you just named that left the building, what was his name? Jalen Moore, the left tackle? Yeah. Dude, I had never heard his name before, and he just got paid absolutely bank by the Chiefs. He might get you guys a 4th-round pick next year for a guy that I just never even knew existed, to be honest with you. Doing this podcast for 2-3 years, never knew him. In part because
49er
obviously,
legend Jalen Moore.
yeah, he's about to be in a year from now. Because you're going to draft some super stud wide receiver or linebacker or something with a fucking comp pick. Some shit that I wish the Raiders had done, and finally we are. We'll get there. But, that's part of it is your team, your roster needs to get younger, and the Niners front office is doing that. It's just you're playing the slow game. And I don't know if – I'm assuming we've talked about it on the podcast, but if not, we've definitely talked about it over the phone. The Niners have a very easy schedule next year. So even with a roster that looks like it's like, I wouldn't call it depleted, but just, it has had some major losses and it feels negative, they still have a very clear shot at a wild card berth at least next year because their schedule frankly looks so easy. Things change every year. You guys, let's say that you pay the Patriots, and it's like we're assuming today you guys are going to beat the shit out of the Patriots. Maybe the Patriots win the AFC East next year. Do we think that's going to happen? No, but maybe they're just that good out of nowhere, like the Commanders, right? Anyways, I think you guys, and this year you're tied with like the Ravens for the most draft picks. Like you guys are loaded the next 2 years with draft picks. You're retooling with youth, and the big thing is hitting on those picks and developing those guys, right? And if you do, and you do that well, you'll be able to withstand these losses and the upcoming losses next year, and hopefully within a year or two, be right back at the top again, in theory, with Brock Purdy, Warner, Boza, if he's healthy, Ayuk, probably a new running back, maybe a new tight end. We'll see. Actually, I think Kettle can still go for a couple more years, but new left tackle. But, I think what the Niners are doing is pretty wise. So, because going into this offseason, I thought they're still in the Super Bowl window, but seeing the moves that they made, it seems like, all right, they're taking a step back and they're being a little bit more financially responsible, especially considering the contract that's coming with Purdy. You got to start being responsible.
I got 2 things. So First off, I'm sorry to hear that Discord was slowing down your computer. We can reinstall it and I will help you so it doesn't run when your computer starts. There's a way to turn that off. So
for sure. I mean, to be honest with you, I never used it on my laptop. I only use it on my phone, so I'm all good.
All right. But we are going to figure out the draft order. So besides that, my second thing is that, you mentioned if the 49ers are going to sign Brock Purdy, they should do it now rather than later. I agree. If they are, is that their plan though? Like what the hell? I mean, you're either going to pay him or you're not, and it's going to be around $50-something million. What is the holdup? Is it the guaranteed money? Is it the amount of years? Or is it, you know what? We just don't know. Because if you don't know, then you probably shouldn't. If you don't,
it probably has to do with the amount of money and guarantees, like the annual average and the guarantees total. I think those are the big things to them.
Because John Lynch today said that there's no guarantee that Brock will get extended this year.
Yeah, I mean,
what the hell is the holdup? Is he your franchise guy or not? Don't you want to lock him up?
Yeah, I mean, I wonder if maybe it's a little bit of, looking back on the past. There's a term for it, and I hate that I'm forgetting it because I use it a lot. Not recency bias, but just, past experiences affecting their decision-making moving forward, in the sense that they signed Jimmy Garoppolo to the highest quarterback salary after like 6 weeks of play, however many years ago.
No, it was 5 games. 5 games,
Yeah.
they made him the highest paid player.
Yeah, and to me, that was the most asinine thing I had ever seen a franchise do. That's probably not true, but I'm being a little over the top right now. But I remember,
Okay.
yeah, I remember being dumbfounded by it though. I was just like, wow, really? Like, I understand if he was an upcoming free agent, but like, really, the highest paid? He has a really good agent, And I wonder if maybe one aspect to this could be the Niners saying, we've seen Purdy do great things. We've seen him lead us to the NFC Championship, and to the Super Bowl. But we did just see him have a down year. And I know this is like, it probably sucks for Purdy when he plays badly or something, then it's, yep, there's Mr. Irrelevant, right? But if he's not uber consistent, could a team look at him as, well, he was a 7th round pick? Like, that's pretty ballsy of us to invest in a guy who maybe he's just going on the best Linsanity run ever. I don't know, but I I don't know how to put it. I guess just that's where Mac Jones becomes interesting to me, of like, if I'm the Niners, there's this opportunity cost of, yeah, we should sign Purdy. I mean, me personally, I think you should. It's just the price. But it would be interesting to see if some other guy can come in just randomly, Mac Jones, and do exactly what Purdy's doing. Because if so, you shouldn't pay Purdy. But the only way you're going to see that is by not paying him. You'd have to do it this season. I don't know. Just, yeah, I don't know if I really explained that well, but paying a quarterback can either set a franchise back or keep them afloat, and it's one of the two.
I mean, it's kind of one of those things, right? It's one of those things where, look at the Dolphins right now. Are they serious Super Bowl contenders with Tua making that much money?
No.
Are they a better football team when Tua's on the field?
Yeah.
Hell yeah. They were horrible without Tua, right?
Yeah.
But they're not going to win a Super Bowl with them. It's not going to happen. I'm willing to say that, right? Like, I don't think Tua is going to be a Super Bowl winning quarterback in his career. I'm willing to bet. I bet you 10 push-ups. I'm not going to bet a punch, which I still owe you, by the way. Yeah. But, well, I really owe it to everyone, because Joey still asks me, like, almost every time I see him, he's like, did you punch Mike yet? I'm like, no, not yet.
I'm not trying to evade this. It just hasn't happened yet.
It just hasn't happened yet. Just like Brock Purdy's contract, it just hasn't happened yet. Yeah. But, yeah, I mean, it's tough because I feel like Brock Purdy is closer to Tua than he is to Josh Allen. And they all make similar money. But the talent disparity is there.
I think Josh Allen makes the same amount as Tua, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah,
like
I think Josh Allen,
not guaranteed, but per year.
Yeah, $55 million per year. Is that exactly what Tua makes?
I'm pretty sure. He's one of those guys.
Yeah, and then it's one of those things where it's like, well, the Jaguars are paying Trevor Lawrence this much money, and he hasn't proved shit. And it's like, wow, what do we call the Jacksonville Jaguars? We call them morons. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Like, I don't know. I get it. It's the market, but like,
yeah, it's tough.
It's like paying $300 for a like actual Jordans, like vintage Jordans versus like, let's just say Mac Jones is like, you go to the Nike outlet and find a pair of maybe not like actual signature shoes, but
Right.
they are Jordans.
Yeah, I
And
mean,
they're like $50.
yeah. I guess a good way to put that is like if you're going to play basketball, or maybe a better example would be like getting a sports car versus a Honda Accord, and you're driving to the same location. You know, it's like both cars are going to get you there, right? Both
Yeah.
pairs of shoes are going to be good for basketball. It's just one's cooler, one's better, and what have you. But there's probably perks to both, like the price, um, or one relative to the other. But there's a whole lot more to be said about like quarterbacks getting signed. Like I think like a good example with like the Jags is like if they don't re-sign uh Trevor Lawrence, then how does their franchise look? You know? Like it kind of goes in both ways of yeah, them signing him does make it harder for them, but also we've seen teams be able to, mess with the cap space every year where they could turn the quarterback's contract into a signing bonus practically each year and add void years at the end of it and basically just extend the cap hits to smaller increments per year to where they're not really killing themselves in the cap each year. Um, and hey, at least they have a quarterback, and they can do that when they need to, right? Like the Chiefs, I think, did it this year, and they got like $17 million in cap space or some shit.
The 49ers just need to do this. Look, Brock Purdy signs for $49 million per year. That'll get the fans. I mean, Brock Purdy will probably be hating life. We'll be thinking, well, all right, with that much money though, can you really hate life? Like that's a lot of
Yeah,
money. And then the Niners could sell it too, where it's like, oh, he's the highest paid player in 49er history. That
right.
can be true, but I get it. It's going to be in the 50s, but hey, I mean, I wouldn't have a single problem paying Brock Purdy like 45 million per year,
Right.
and that would still be a lot of money.
Yeah, I mean, I
I think
think if you
50
guys
million I'm fine with too.
yeah, exactly. If you guys got him for $45 million, you should attempt to do a backflip. That would be great because you're looking at least probably 52 million per year if I had to guess right now.
I think that he would get 55.
Yeah, there you
I
go.
think that's what he's going to get.
Yeah. So,
So,
that's
yeah.
that.
Papa J
Oh,
said
go ahead, go ahead. I'll get to it after.
Papa J says, but all those were the result of the 49ers not paying them right away. I guess when I was talking earlier about Armstead, Debo, do you remember how the Debo price was it? Yeah, I think it was Debo. He got extended after Christian Kirk got his money. And
Yeah, I mean that's what I mean. Like this offseason, I mean, Gino's still waiting to get his contract, which I don't think will affect Purdy, but you never know. But there are other quarterbacks I'm sure that will get paid in the next year that will affect Purdy's, you know, set point.
mm-hmm. Real quick, I want to skip to this comment from Papa J. 5 years, 300 million, with 180 million guaranteed, in his opinion. What if the 49ers just like blow people away with like they just pay Brock Purdy like an ungodly amount of money, just explode. They just like they didn't pay anybody else, and then it's like
Yeah.
the Niners are like, why go 5 years 300 million when we can go 5 years 300 billion? Just fucking obviously there's no 300 billion, but I was originally thinking 5 years $1 billion bet, just fucking do it.
Yeah. Well, I
then
was having a
then
conversation.
watch the quarterback market. Yeah, what are you gonna do, huh?
Yeah. Well,
Sign
it's crazy
nobody
because
ever. You have
I was
to
having a
you have to
conversation.
sell the team.
Yeah. I was having a conversation with my stepdad this weekend. We were talking about like what sport's going to get the first $1 billion player because it's going to happen. And at this
Baseball.
rate, it'll probably be baseball for sure, or soccer, like internationally. But at this rate, the way that the NFL has been going, in the next 10 years, we'll see a quarterback get paid $1 billion. Because it sounds crazy, but if you get one more Pat Mahomes in 8 years from now, maybe even 5, and then 5 years later, he's looking for a new contract. At least mathematically, what has happened? Okay, what year was that when Garoppolo got signed to the top end deal, which was like 25.5 million per year?
It was the 2018 offseason.
So 2018. So how many years ago was that? 7?
Yeah, that was about 7 years ago.
Okay, let's just say it's 7 years ago. The highest paid quarterback in the league was getting $25 million per year. 7 years later, actually 6 years later, maybe even 5, depending on when Dak signed that stupid ass contract. Let's just say 6 years later, it has more than doubled, right? At $60 million per year. That's the top end quarterback per year average. Pat Mahomes signed a 10-year, $50 million per year deal, which comes out to $500 million. So that's $10 million less per year on a long-term 10-year deal. That's the key, is it has to be a long-term 10-year deal. $500 million. So if we double it in 7 more years and somebody does a 10-year deal, it might be $1 billion. If the cap keeps going up and they keep raising it every year, if the market goes that way. But do I actually think it's going to happen? No. But I'm just saying, mathematically, over the course of the last 7 years, hashtag thank you America for inflation, and I guess the NFL for being just uber popular and just continuously raking in money. We have a $500 million quarterback out there.
Okay. Shohei Ohtani, 10 years, 700 million.
Yeah, almost there.
Yeah, he was almost there, and fuck the Dodgers. I can always say that and feel good. But I mean, here's the thing. I feel like there's going to be 1 year where the cap doesn't grow. The NFL just, I don't think it can grow forever. You know what I mean? I feel like it's going to be one of those things where I don't know when it is, but some certain sports get popular at different times. Yeah, and I can see a scenario where if they keep fucking with all these rule changes and like fucking with football and making it, weaker. Like right now it seems like the hot commodity, but I mean, I'm not saying football's going to go away. There will still be diehard fans, but don't you think like 20 years of what we currently have, don't you think people might get bored and start watching another sport again? And then the NFL will start to rise again, whenever it just gets popular. Like, I mean, that's just how I think. That's just assuming that everybody is just always going to be plugged in on football,
Right. I think that they've done such a great job with branding and just I think a big part of football is that it's once per week. Whereas baseball, basketball, hockey, it's 2, 3, 4 times a week. And also like the channels, at least for me personally, I don't have I have my dad's house, I have my mom's house, I have my house. I don't have any CSN Bay Area. Yeah, I could go on Peacock and, do this or whatever and find the app or what have you, stream it somehow. I'm sure I could, but I don't have it. I don't watch Warrior games. I don't watch hockey games at home. I don't watch baseball games at home. If I want to watch the Sharks or the Giants, I'm going to go to a game. If I want to watch the A's, I'm not going to watch the A's. I don't want to watch the A's anymore. But football, it's so simple even a dumbass could watch it, basically, you know,
Um,
and it's just, where it is and when it is every week. And with that is just how popular it is. With that is how fun it is to watch if you're a sports fan. They just have everything right to me. And yes, I agree. At some point, perhaps it might fall off a little bit because baseball has fallen off.
yes.
But I think
And
football and
baseball was
baseball,
America's pastime.
yeah. And maybe it's a generational thing. Like maybe 2 generations from now, people will be like, yeah, we don't want to watch this stuff. These people are killing themselves. And we'll be, I don't know, just people all up in their feelings or something. I'd rather watch basketball. And
Yeah,
basketball
or
becomes the big thing.
I'd rather watch esports. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like as we start to get older and the youth starts to, kind of kick in as like the main consumers, their generation, how interested are they going to be in football, and how much of, the actual fan base of football is going to continue to live on. You know what I mean? And I'm not saying it won't replenish. I think football right now, it's lightning in a bottle. Anything football right now is just it's ever growing,
Yeah.
or it appears that way. But I don't think there's an infinite amount of growth. You know what I mean?
No, for sure. They can absolutely keep fucking with the rules and it'll get bad. But I think the most likely aspect to what causes the NFL's demise, because again, like everything about it, its branding and its history and everything in between, how simple it is, everything works in its favor. What could go against it is essentially two things, but they're kind of the same thing. If the fans get priced out, and I think more specifically, if they were to go exclusively to streaming, if they start falling in line with like, get Fox games on this streaming channel, get these games on this streaming channel, like Netflix, ESPN, Fox, CBS, like if they're all streaming and all on different platforms, and like let's just say cable just goes away, that's when they're gonna get fucked. Because people, I know me, I don't want to pay for 4 different fucking streaming channels. I'm good. That shit adds up quick. And then the other aspect of like getting priced out, like that's part of that, but also game tickets just keep rising. People don't go to games anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And then again, if it's streaming, like you're getting priced out on that, et cetera, et cetera. Anyways,
let me quickly go through the comments, and then I'll go through the 49er team needs, and we can move on to the Raiders. Papa J says, "Yeah, Josh, I don't get that about Tabor Pepper either. Yeah, I don't get it. With Juice, it's just like one of those situations where you break up with a girl and realize you can't do any better, so you get back with her."
Excellent. I was busy restarting my laptop when you talked about use check. Is that possible?
Yeah, I did.
Okay, that was the other thing I was going to mention. But I'm glad that you already talked about it. That was just interesting. That whole situation. I found that very confusing, and I still don't know what the hell happened, other than what Papa J just said.
Well, yeah, Papa J just laid it out. It's you realize, hey, you know what? I can't do better. Gotta call her back. I don't know. It was just weird.
I'm still curious what like the cap implications were, because I know they added a year, but like, was there dead cap when they cut him? Was that put back into his contract when they signed him? Is it allocate? I don't know. It's confusing.
Question, Mike, does Juszczyk still count as the longest tenured player?
Yeah.
But he wasn't on the team for like 3 days. His tenure started a couple weeks ago, I guess, or restarted.
I think if like the Raiders were to sign Amari Cooper, I think technically, I guess I'd have to search up the definition of tenure, but he would be vested, let's say 6 years with the Raiders if he signs for a 1-year deal. or maybe it was he got traded in his 4th year, so 5 years, right? So, that I don't know if that technically counts as a 5-year tenure or restarting it,
Papa J says it restarts all over again. He doesn't get that 10-year tenure.
And there you go. Well, that's weird. It's even weirder for them to do that.
Yep. Maybe that's why they did it.
They want whoever the next guy is, whether it's Warner or somebody.
Greg, tuning into the channel, says Scadaboo reminds me of Toby Gerhart, of a Toby Gerhart type of running back. They run the same 40-yard dash.
Gerhart was really good at Stanford, and then he kind of just fell off with the Vikings. I can see Scadabo being really good in the NFL because I think Scadabo is a bit more athletic than Gerhart was. And, Gerhart was kind of coming in at that time where we still really like those power backs and thumping type running backs. And Scadabo can do that, but he's also very sneakily agile for what he looks like. And I was watching a bit of him just today, and something I noticed about him, this is a good thing to find about a running back, is he's the type of running back that always falls forward. So, but again, also agile.
Real quick, I want to go back to this comment by Papa J. Do you mean that the 49ers are the ones that, realized that they couldn't do better, or Juszczyk was the one that realized that he couldn't do better, or both?
My guess would be both, honestly.
Because he visited with the Steelers, and then decided to go back to the Niners.
Yeah. The other aspect would be, who decided they needed that to be terminated?
It was the Niners.
So then at that point, it's probably the Niners then that realize we can't do better. If they cut him, that's why it's confusing to me of well, what was the point of cutting him? You could have just signed a 1-year extension and allocated the cap space however you wanted, but instead by cutting him, I'm pretty sure there was a dead cap hit.
Yeah, but it could also be like this. It could be, Juszczyk, we think that you're worth, what did he end up getting? $4 million. We think that you're worth, $4 million, and he's like, no, I think I'm worth $6 million, right?
Right.
I think I'm worth at least $6 million. Okay, we're gonna have to let you go. Fine then, right? Goes to the Steelers. Hey, how would you like to sign for $5 million? And then he's like, you know what? For $5 million, all right, Niners, I'll take the $4 million.
Right.
I'll just take the $4 million. I don't have to move. I like being here.
It's also very possible or likely that they cut him kind of out of respect because, again, I just think the dead cap hit is what trips me out about it. But it's probably not that much. But still, out of respect to him of you want to try to find a better deal out there, be our guest. But if you can't, we'd love to have you back.
Mm-hmm. I think the Niners are also in a good position to make a run for, I think they can win a playoff game this year.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you just need the health to fall the right way for you guys. Ayuk, McCaffrey. I would even go as far to say Purdy.
I think with the schedule they have, they can easily be a wild card team, or they easily should be a wild card team.
Yeah.
A Super Bowl contender, I don't know, because I don't think that they're getting past Philadelphia. I don't know how Detroit's going to look without Ben Johnson, but they're pretty scary. And then the Commanders got a lot better. So
also Minnesota, it's interesting.
Yeah, although they've got they've got the biggest question mark right now with JJ McCarthy, right? And maybe the Niners will have a big question mark with Mac Jones. Who knows? Greg says 49ers are going to have some changes on defense. I believe it is the draft to do it. Yeah, I keep hearing about how deep this year's draft class is. So that bodes well for the Niners who are clearing out old players and making room for new ones. Yeah, this year's draft is heavy on defense. That's what I like to hear, especially with Robert Saleh being able to coach him up. Greg says that special teams coach should be fired if you put hands on Deebo Samuel. Well, Deebo Samuel was the one who put hands on Tabor Pepper, the long snapper, but I don't know about any special teams coach who did put hands on Deebo. But if he did, yeah, he should be fired. Papa J says nostalgia for what? Please let me know. Mike, you explained that well, but let's also remember the cap goes up every year. 60 million in a couple of years will be minimum wage. I don't think you should be telling Mike. I think Mike kind of touched on that. You should be telling me, okay? Because I'm the one over here bitching about it. So
that's why I said if you get Purdy for 45 million per year, you should try to do a backflip. Maybe even try to get like a winning scratcher on the lotto.
If they give Purdy 45 million a year, I will be one happy camper. Do you think that the 49ers show Brock loyalty, then he'll show loyalty right back and restructure his contract every year for more of a team-friendly deal, just like Tom Brady and Patrick Mahomes? Okay.
I'll say this. Like, usually those restructures, usually they're not even really restructures. They just convert cap space or like cap hits into signing bonuses. So really, it's a win-win where it becomes less of a cap hit for the team. And, oh, by the way, yeah, we're just going to convert this to where you're going to get this in your bank account right now. Mm-hmm. There's no complaint there. It's basically guaranteed money.
Okay. So I always hear about people talk about that Brock Purdy saved the 49ers, and in a sense he did, but I hate that people don't talk about how the 49ers saved Brock Purdy, because he was about to be Mr. Irrelevant and potentially never see a football field. And then all of a sudden now he might be one of the highest paid players in the NFL. I'm not saying Brock Purdy didn't put in work to, get in that position, but if the 49ers hadn't used that final pick on him and he goes somewhere else, who's to say that Brock Purdy would be Brock Purdy? You know what I mean? Like if Brock Purdy had been drafted by the Patriots a round earlier, or in that same round, I guess, are you confident that Brock Purdy would be this player that he is now, or would that have been career suicide for him?
Well, I think honestly, when he got drafted, they had Garoppolo and Trey Lance in the building. Trey Lance was at that time like the clear-cut quarterback of the future for this franchise. If he had lasted one more pick, aka if he went undrafted, I feel like he would have felt that he had a better situation, maybe with the Raiders, maybe with the Bears,
the
maybe
Falcons,
with any team.
Yep.
Over the Niners, Where did you go to college? In
Iowa State.
Iowa State. So I don't know what the hell would be closest to Iowa, but let's just say it's the Broncos. Maybe he'd want to go to the Broncos.
Yeah, Niners saved
him too.
That
I don't know where Iowa is.
But, he saved the Niners, but the Niners saved him too. They saved him first.
Right. So it's been a good marriage.
And Papa J says like and subscribe. And then Papa J said about restarting the tenure. It's because they officially cut him. And then also he's saying that they both did. He was referring to the Niners, but they definitely both did in terms of the getting back together. Greg says Patrick Mahomes will be the billionaire quarterback. No. Patrick Mahomes is done. He just lost the Super Bowl, and he is going to have a Super Bowl hangover, and he is going to film commercials and never play in a Super Bowl again. Worst outcome ever. No, I don't know. That'd be the best outcome ever. But
Yeah, Mahomes will not be the quarterback that signs a $1 billion deal, but he will be a billionaire. I'll tell you that
yeah,
much. Because he's already halfway there, and that's not even including all the advertisement that he does, and not
and the
including
ownership
whenever.
of the Kansas City Royals.
Yeah, that's always going to be fluid, but also it's also not including whatever his next deal will be. Let's say it's 4 years from
Part
now,
ownership.
Yeah, so he'll be a billionaire. It's just it won't be a $1 billion contract.
Man, I'll tell you after the show. I'm not going to say it here. I will get jumped by Niner fans.
Oh, okay, gosh.
Yeah,
Nostalgia. I forget I forget what even I was talking about. I think it had to do with like looking back on moves that you have made, and that affecting a move that you make in the future. It's not nostalgia. That'd be like looking back on things in a nice way, like looking back on 1989 Batman. I don't know, but I'd say the word would be I'll think about it. I'll think about it. Keep going.
yeah. Papa J says if the 49ers didn't pick up Brock Purdy, that would have sucked for the 49ers because they lost Jimmy G and Trey Lance, and they would have been stuck with Josh Johnson that year. Well, they didn't win the Super Bowl. They still haven't won a Super Bowl, so nothing would have changed in that regard. And I guess the way I feel is, I mean, like I said, they both saved each other because if Brock Purdy didn't get selected by the 49ers, he would have gone to a worse team and performed worse, you know? So I think they both, scratched each other's backs. You know what I mean?
Mm.
And in the words of Superbad, the funny thing about my back is that it's located on my Brock.
Retrospection is a good word, but it's not the exact word I was thinking of. But that's a good way to put it. Retrospection.
Greg says, all right, my Angels took one from the Cards. We needed that win. Now in first for the AL West. The Angels are in first? That's the first time that I've heard that they're first in anything in a long time. Is Mike Trout, is he okay? I know he got hit in the hand the other day. Cardinals are a hard team. Yeah, in baseball. Or whenever the football Cardinals play against the Niners. Considering that Brock Purdy has been climbing and doing awesome throughout his college years, I think that he would have done just fine with another team in the NFL. I compare him to Bo Nix. I mean, I don't fully agree. I don't think that he would have done well with the Patriots. I don't think that he would have done well in the Carolina Panthers. I don't think that he would have done well on the New York Jets. I think there's a number of teams that Brock Purdy could have struggled on or not even have gotten an opportunity. Like, that's one thing. The Niners are probably the only team that Brock Purdy would have potentially gotten playing time for. So many teams passed on him. Not many. How many other Mr. Irrelevance have ever gotten playing time? If other teams were interested in playing him at quarterback, they would have drafted him earlier.
Yeah, and even if they do draft him in the 6th round, 7th round, chances are he's the third quarterback. Does he even get enough play, whether it's the preseason, training camp, what have you? Does he ever even get the consideration of should he be not even our starter, but our second quarterback? Does he ever just get the opportunity to show what he has? Does he fit the offense well? Or by chance, do they just say, yeah, we'll just stash him on the practice squad for 4 years and he never gets a shot?
Yeah, like who in the NFL besides Brock Purdy is later than a 5th round pick, or let alone a 4th round pick? A 4th round pick and later, who actually saw the field last year. Dak Prescott was a 4th round pick, right? Aiden O'Connell.
Yeah, which
Brock
he was
Purdy.
a 4th round pick.
Aiden O'Connell was a 4th? I thought he was a 5th.
Maybe he was a 5th. I think he was a late 4th. I might just be thinking of the fact that he wore number 4. I don't know. But I would say, that 4th to 5th round is kind of the latest for like potential starters. Anything after that, you never really see it. The only guy I could think of last year was now I'm thinking of draft prospects. What the hell? My mind just went all over the place. The Patriots quarterback that played the final week of the season. Milton. See, I was thinking Jalen Milroe, and I was like, no, don't do that. But yes, Joe Milton.
Papa J says, in your opinion, do you think that Patrick Mahomes' next job will be with the Muppets? Isn't that his current daily life? Greg says, streaming already killed the game of the NFL when they took it away from DirecTV. I like that they took it away from DirecTV. I think that I think Sunday Ticket should be a lot cheaper. They even had a lawsuit that went in favor of the NFL, like purposefully making Sunday Ticket, way too expensive. And the consumers won the lawsuit, and then they appealed it, and then they overturned it. So That shit sucked. Papa J said, hindsight.
Hindsight. There you go. That's the word. Yeah, that's the word that I use. Yes. Thank you. Good call. Good call.
Speaking of good calls, let me rapid fire just the team needs that the 49ers have, going into the draft. I'll be pretty brief on here. And then we can move on to our next topic. But the team needs, I'd say, in terms of the offensive side of the ball, the 49ers need to bolster their offensive line. They absolutely should replace Jake Brendel. I think, at left guard, I think Ben Barch played well in relief of Aaron Banks last year, but I personally would look to slide Colton McKivitz to left guard if he's able to, because I think that he's flexible in the positions that he could play, and then draft a tackle. I would draft a tackle. I would look for a starting right tackle who could replace McKivitz if he were to slide to left guard, or even just replace him outright if you get both. But it's not realistic. So I would get a starting right tackle and potentially a replacement to Trent Williams if he were to miss time or retire. So another swing tackle. That's where losing a guy like Jalen Moore will hurt, because he could play both sides, left tackle and right tackle. But yeah, those are the positions that I would focus on the offensive line. I think we're good at right guard, but probably build depth would be a good idea. Wide receiver, I think, they absolutely need to look into getting another wide receiver, because Brandon Ayuk will miss time. Debo's no longer going to be on the team, and they're going to need more than just, Ricky Pearsall and Juwan Jennings to start the season. I think that Jacob Cowing is a little bit undersized too. So, I mean, maybe they can call up Tariq Owens from the practice squad. They did sign Demarcus Robinson, but maybe they should look to add a receiver. Maybe I don't know how to feel about Tet McMillan at 11 if he's there, but I personally, I don't know. I don't like that. I mean, he says he doesn't watch film on his own, because they watch as a team, but is he just saying that shit on purpose to like tank his draft capital to not go to like a shitty team like the Giants or he's not going to go to the Giants, but to get away from the shitty teams is what I'm saying.
Yeah. He doesn't want to go top 6.
Yeah.
Well, okay, I'll say this. 1, no, because the difference between getting picked let's just say 6th overall versus 11th overall is massive financially per year. But also, I am pretty sure I saw a tweet that said that was from when he was a freshman. And it sure seemed to me like whoever was filming that probably didn't let him know that he was getting filmed. Just from the way that the video came off to me. But it certainly is a bad look. I already, before that video, was kind of falling off of the idea of Ted McMillan at 6. And then I saw that and I was like, I never considered whether or not he has character concerns. Like, if he does have a football, if he doesn't like football, I can tell you right now, not that he doesn't like football, but doesn't like watching football, I can tell you right now the Raiders aren't picking him. From everything I've heard from Spytek and Pete Carroll, that is not a guy that they want in their building. I know we're talking about the Niners right now. And as far as talking about the Niners right now, Ted McMillan, the player, damn, that would be crazy on your guys' team. But I agree. Like, the first thing I think of when I think of the Niners offense and what do they need, it's offensive line. And I think if you have a top tier offensive lineman at 11th overall, you take it. If not, I know this is getting ahead, probably defensive tackle.
Yeah, I think you could probably that's a good debate to have on whether or not they need offensive line or defensive line more, but I would lean defensive line because, I mean, they were getting they've had trouble stopping the run for a couple of years now, and they need other people besides Nick Bosa on the defensive line. Like, it's literally Bosa and nobody else right now.
Yeah.
Like, who else? Gross Matos?
Yeah.
But going back to the offensive needs, running back, with Jordan Mason gone, they could use another set of, fresh young legs after Isaac Guerrero. And tight end, I'd say that they need depth. They added, Luke. What's his name? Luke. I
am your father.
Luke Farrell. No, you're an idiot, dude. That was horrible. Luke Farrell. Sorry. Stupid. All right. On defense, the 49ers need to add to their defensive line. They need edge rushers, plural. They need edge rushers and defensive tackles. They also need to look to replace Dre Greenlaw, whether that's going to be D. Winters or somebody that they're going to add in the draft. I've seen a couple mock drafts showing that the Niners might, take Jahad Campbell, but those are fan mock drafts, and those don't ever, they're not fully accurate. But I like the idea of adding an Alabama linebacker. And then, what were you going to say, Mike?
Oh, I think the flashy picks, like the top end linebacker, the top end wide receiver, that sounds nice, but you guys need to be, in the first round, it's got to be somebody in the trenches. I think I would bet money that it's either an offensive or defensive lineman. The other possibility maybe is corner, but I think they got to go for the premium position, which is, in the trenches.
I would think that they would go for an offensive lineman because I hear that this draft class is very deep at defensive tackle.
Yeah. I could definitely see that. I could see them offensive lineman first round, defensive tackle second round. That makes a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm. So, in terms of other defensive needs, they, I think, need safety depth. And, at corner, they need another starting caliber corner because they just lost Charvarius Ward. And the last player of need that they shouldn't even draft. They should just get an undrafted player or sign a veteran. Is a goddamn kicker. I think Jake Moody needs competition or just needs to be outright replaced.
Yep.
Yeah. Papa J says Teddy Buchanan.
Yeah, linebacker from Cal. I haven't watched him yet, but I've heard a lot of good things.
And says, yeah, the 11th pick definitely has to be in the trenches. And yeah, DBs.
I could
DBs need to
see
be
this.
added.
I could see the situation. How do you feel about your nickel corner right now? Who is the starting nickel? Is it Ambry Thomas?
No, he's
Still?
gone.
Okay, thank God.
No,
Who
it's
is it?
so I want to say it's Diamador Lenore, but
Okay.
I think it just depends on the matchup.
But he also plays outside, right?
Yeah.
Like he's kind of your number one corner at the same time.
Well,
Or
he
at
is
least your
now.
top corner.
With now that Ward is gone.
Right. Would you say he's better inside or outside? I guess the question actually doesn't really matter. But what do you think, I guess?
I like him inside,
Mhm.
personally, and I kind of prefer Renardo Green on the outside.
Mhm.
So I would say that the Niners need to look for another outside corner, but like I said, I think Lenore is good enough to play anywhere that you stick him. So the 49ers could have flexibility to,
Mhm.
get a corner that specializes at one or the other.
Yeah, like when I see mock drafts and stuff, let's see, Will Johnson has a very solid shot of making it to the 11th pick, but the guy who might fit better is Jahdae Barron from Texas, um, who can play both inside and outside at corner. And he has more of that like he reminds me more of like a Nate Hobbs type, like very physical and like mean spirited, whereas Will Johnson is more like your typical zone corner who just is kind of more savvy, you know, like and just kind of a ball hawk. But I think coming out of this pre-draft process, Will Johnson comes off to me like a guy who, at least in the past year to 8 months, cannot really stay healthy, and that freaks me the hell out. But obviously, it's because it's a pre-draft, and it's like you don't want to sign a guy with hamstring issues or anything like that, or draft a guy. I mean, first round. But the year before that, if he came out of the draft in 2023, he would have been a top 5 pick, quite possibly. Probably not, but um, and coming into this year's draft process, like December, January, the assumption was he's a top 5 pick, and now it's like the earliest he might be picked is 11 overall. The next pod that we have will be more focused on the draft. I'm just totally killing time right now, but my point here is I wouldn't rule out corner with that 11th pick because you might have your shot at, besides Travis Hunter, the top corner in the class.
Mm-hmm. Papa J says kickers are everywhere. I can find one at Home Depot.
Yeah. There's probably a kicker right now, not even joking, who totally could be a starting kicker in the league, who was on an NFL roster a year or two ago, who is currently a manager at a literal like Home Depot or something. So, yeah.
Life after football.
Yeah.
Mike, are you ready to talk about Raider free agency updates?
Oh, am I?
Let's talk about it.
Let's talk about it.
What have the Raiders done?
Well, I guess I'll talk about it first before we visualize it. So the last time we did the podcast, we had just reacted to like a day after, if not the day of, Geno Smith getting traded to the Raiders.
Yep.
And just days before that was Max Crosby getting re-signed. And that was 2 days before free agency really started. And I think coming into free agency with the second most cap space in the league, you would think we are going to be off and running in free agency. And admittedly, I thought, we're going to get one big name. We'll sign one big name like why am I forgetting his name? Let's see. Byron Murphy, corner. Like, give me a starting corner to go with re-signing Max Crosby, getting a quarterback, the biggest need of all. and I'm elated. And they did not go for any big names in free agency. In fact, I think the biggest things that happened, and this comes off negative, but I feel fine. The biggest things that happened in free agency to the Raiders, because again, Geno Smith, Matt Crosby, that was before free agency. The biggest things that happened was losing Trevon Merrick and Robert Spillane. Those felt like big losses on the defense, and that's what I was nervous about in the last podcast. I was saying we have all these impending free agents. I know we have the second most cap space, but it's just incredibly unrealistic to expect them to re-sign everybody because all of them are looking for pretty big deals. The relocators. Yeah, they relocated, but let's talk about how the A's handled it relative to the Raiders. But losing Spillane, losing Merrick, that was big. Especially Merrick, like looking at his contract, $17 million per year. It's like, yeah, no shit, they weren't paying him that. I feel like they did a great job of. They even had like a term for it in their most recent press conference. Like essentially wisely spending, you know, essentially having a set price and not bending over, you know, and bending over backwards for somebody to just, all right, fine, we'll give you that money. Probably what the Patriots did for like Milton Williams.
The Patriots did that for everyone.
Oh yeah, because they had by far the most cap space in the league, and maybe because they have the young quarterback, they feel like they can just spend money like crazy, and also because they had a lot of needs. But again, they had a lot of cap space; they could do it. Whereas the Raiders, I mean, you just re-signed Crosby to a mega deal. You haven't even re-signed Geno Smith yet, so there's some future money to, you know, expect there that hasn't been, you know, adjusted yet. And you have to fill in spots for this team. There's going to be draft picks. I think there are some guys on the roster right now that still need to get re-signed that have 1 year left on their deal. Guys like Jacoby Myers, who I would be signing in a heartbeat right now, and Colton Miller, among maybe a few others. Another guy before, you know, even Max Crosby that they re-signed was Isaiah Pola-Mao. They signed him to a 2 year deal. That was good. And it was a good price too, which again, like that was before free agency, but if it kind of feels in hindsight, like that was the telltale sign of what was to come, of like they have a set price and they're not gonna bend over for a guy that's like, no, I need $17 million per year. Like Trevon Merrick. Not that Trevon Merrick was like holding them at gunpoint, like 17 or nothing. Like, no, it's just the Raiders had a set price. Hey, Trevon, we'll give you, let's say it was 13.5, $14 million per year. Like, we're ready to give you that. But respectfully, Trevon Merrick probably wanted to see what the market would provide him in free agency, especially considering he was probably the best safety on the market. Sure enough, he goes out there and he's like, Jesus, Carolina, 17 per year, huh? I can't say no to that, right? That's all fair. Yeah. And John Spytek has even said that, I don't know if it was to Vic Tafur exclusively or in a press conference. I know Vic Tafur somehow managed to catch up to Spytek, I think today at the owners' meetings. That's kind of ongoing right now. And Spytek said, you know, once we realized that we were going to be losing these guys and they were going to get paid more than we expected, again, Spillane got a big deal with New England, Merrick with the Panthers. I'll just go through all of them. Nate Hobbs with the Packers, Divine Diablo going to the Falcons, Harrison Bryant, I think, went to the Eagles, Alexander Madison went to the Dolphins, Marcus Epps went to the Patriots. Those are the guys that they lost, but those top three guys got paid pretty big. Once they realized, like, yeah, we're not retaining these guys, they're getting paid big money, we can actually play this towards the the draft compensation. Why am I forgetting the word? The compensatory picks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like you just said it.
I just said it. Yeah. Once they realize, like, yeah, we're losing these guys to big money, and they could get us compensatory picks. That's when they decided, all right, then we'll go for that. And again, we'll keep our set prices with these free agents and just hope to land a couple good ones, like Jeremy Chin, right? But also, what else did they do? Their biggest signings were re-signing guys on their defensive line, Malcolm Kuntz and Adam Butler. And re-signing players doesn't affect the compensatory pick, whatever it's called, the formula. What affects it is signing players from outside relative to guys that you lost to other teams. So, Trevon Merrick, 17 per year. Spillane, 11 something, maybe even more per year. And Nate Hobbs, like, let's just say it was 12 per year. The best contract we gave out was to Jeremy Chin for like $8 million per year. Like, that doesn't touch any of those. So I think we're on pace currently to get like a 4th, 5th, and maybe even a 6th next year. And
Mike,
yeah.
Is it normal for news to break this late?
No, why?
Hunter Renfrow just re-signed with the Raiders.
Oh, and of course I don't see it. I was going to get to Renfrow. Let's see it.
April Fools. You stupid. You idiot. You fell for it.
Yeah.
You looked for it in the middle of your speech. Now, Greg said April Fools because he said the Angels are going to win the World Series. Go on with the Raiders. I'm sorry, I had to. I was thinking of whatever I could find. I searched Raiders on Twitter and I saw Renfrow. People talking about Renfrow, and I know you want him back. So,
yeah, I'll give it to you because it's April Fools.
You're stupid. You fell for it.
Yeah, I mean, really, my life's a cruel joke, and being a Raider fan is hard.
Some people have all the luck.
Yeah, I grew up with glass bones and paper skin.
Every day I break my arms.
Every night I break my legs.
All right, go on. Sorry, I'm freaking derailed you.
You're good. Well, at least there was a D in front of it. Well, never mind. DE, and we're done. Cut and scene. The thing with those compensatory picks that they are likely to get next year, the talk of the town is that this year's quarterback draft class kind of sucks, right? Like, I think it's kind of Cam Ward and a bunch of guys. A few guys, like maybe 3 or 4 guys that have the potential to become starters at some point in their career, and then a bunch of other guys that like back up at best, I think. Whereas next year's draft is supposed to have like multiple starters in the first round, plus probably a bunch of guys later in the draft that have potential, right? I really like the idea of getting compensatory picks for next year's class or draft, because you're adding ammo to make a move, right? You're adding that 4th and 5th and 6th round pick to where if you do find yourself in the situation where it's, let's say they get the 12th to 14th overall pick next year, and at 7th overall they see their quarterback still on the board, and they want to make a move for him. They offer their first, so obviously, let's say 13th overall, maybe their second, and their fourth round pick. Maybe that gets done. Maybe their fifth round pick too, whatever it takes. But you have the compensatory picks where you still have the picks, and really you're just losing like a second round pick. And a year ago, we lost Trevon Merrick and Robert Spillane. But guess what? We replaced those guys. So if losing those guys now gets us picks later, I like that, especially because I feel like they were, like I just said, able to replace them pretty well. The one guy that I don't think they have replaced very well is Nate Hobbs. They do need a nickel corner. Like the cornerback need has gotten worse since free agency has started. We'll get there. But as far as the moves that the Raiders have made, as far as in free agency, players that they have signed, the Raiders signed, like I said, Isaiah Polamau. Right before free agency started, they signed Alex Kappa, right guard. Again, before free agency, they re-signed Adam Butler. And then the big free agency signing was Jeremy Chin, who I think is kind of the perfect replacement for Trevon Merrick, a guy who, kind of is very versatile, however you say it, on defense, in the defensive backfield. He can play in the box, he could play in the slot, he could play deep. He can really do it all. And he like on the relative athletic score, those math bomb things I was talking about on the last pod, I think he scored a perfect 10.0 out of 10 as far as an athletic safety prospect goes. Like he's tied for the number one athletic safety of all time coming out of a draft. It's been 4 or 5, however many years now. So is he the same guy? Not necessarily, but he played really good for Washington last year. Really good. So they get him on a 2-year deal. Malcolm Coombs comes back on a 1-year deal. And that's exactly what I wanted, was just a prove-it deal for him. Nothing breaking the bank, but get him back. All the talk was like when he got injured before the regular season even started, like everybody was devastated. Like he was the breakout guy. That's what was supposed to happen, was like he was going to shine. And then he couldn't, So I like getting him back, giving him the chance to go and do that. We'll see how he does with, coming off the knee injury, but it's been a full year. So I'd like to think that he'll be good. They signed Lonnie Johnson, safety. I think that signing was really a special teams signing with the opportunity of, hey, maybe you're our third safety. But I think that they have a few other guys that could possibly be the third safety, notably Thomas Harper. But the starting safeties will be Isaiah Polamau and Jeremy Chin. So, and then they signed Elandon Roberts, linebacker. Other than Jeremy Chin, this is probably my favorite signing. This dude is basically an older version of Robert Spillane. And he's coming from the Steelers, just like Spillane did, 2-3 years ago. A guy who is notably good against the run, notably not so great against the pass. But as far as a run defending linebacker, like you're not going to get all that much better than this, And I think also it's nice because you're getting a leader in the room when you just lost one, So I really like that move. And for not very expensive at all, it was like no more than $4 million on a 1-year deal, I think.
You're still talking about Elandon Roberts?
Yeah.
Okay. I want to ask you about Devin White.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just kind of going in order, so that'll be the last guy, and then we'll talk about it.
Because I wanted to ask because it was by position, but
yeah, I mean, I was, after I do this, gonna have you pull up the spreadsheet. If you want to pull it up now, we might as well, as I kind of keep going on the list. They signed Eric Stokes, former first-round corner for the Packers a couple years ago. Purely I guess I would call it a prove-it deal, kind of just an opportunity of like, hey, we know that you have potential. We saw it your rookie year where you played really well, and then you've been kind of hindered by injuries ever since. Got a little buried on the depth chart because of those injuries. We'll give you a shot to come in here and compete, which that was the message from Pete Carroll in the press conferences. We're going to bring in guys to compete, and I think the free agency class reflects that of like Devin White, Eric Stokes, Lonnie Johnson. These are guys that are coming in with no guarantees to start, in my opinion, but they have the absolute opportunity to start. Devin White and Eric Stokes specifically, ex first round picks who haven't worked out really since their rookie years. Like, hey, this might be your last shot to be a starter. What are you going to do about it? I love that. Is it the perfect way to fill a roster spot? No, obviously, in a perfect world, we get a bona fide starter, but what are you paying for that? What usually happens for agency? You overpay. With these prove it deals, we're not overpaying, and again, we're getting compensatory picks in a year for this when we're probably going to be looking for a quarterback. And if we are, we're probably going to be needing to trade up for a quarterback. So you're going to need picks to give in. Anyways, Raheem Mostert, I would say that's really the only big signing on offense that they've made. And obviously, he's not a starting running back anymore. He's a change of pace guy.
Yeah.
I know a year ago he was the leader in touchdowns in the league, but I'd be insane to think that he's going to do that again. He's not. I think he'd be lucky to get 8 touchdowns this year. So nowhere near 20. But I think another leader for this offense and a guy that can help what I presume to be a rookie starter in this room. Give it a couple weeks.
Question.
Yeah.
This is so random. Do you hear the frogs?
I do. Just barely. Like it's not bad. I can barely hear it. I just realized as you were talking.
It's mating season.
Oh, they're croaking. Oh yeah. Okay. Darnay Holmes was re-signed, nickel corner. He got playing time whenever, Nate Hobbs wasn't playing. And I know when they initially signed him, he was a guy that Patrick Graham had experience with the Giants. So, it's good to have for depth, but I don't think he's a guy that should be starting at nickel. If he's forced to, he's forced to. We'll see what happens. Zach Carter, Sam Webb, some, I don't know if they were restricted free agents, but, re-signings for the Raiders, some, depth pieces on defense. Jordan Meredith, a big re-signing on offense. He was restricted, so it was a matter of time when that would become official. I want to say they signed Kanai Mauga and Charles Snowden to their restricted deals as well, but I just don't think that they have officially signed the deals yet. That's why on there, like inside linebacker and then more to the left, below Max Crosby, I still have them as free agents, but in the yellow restricted free agent color. But I think that they'll be back. And then they signed Lecky Fotu, nose tackle. Really more of a depth guy, but good to have a big body in there. Can't complain. Ian Thomas at tight end. And then, like you mentioned, we just signed Devin White a few days ago. And up until 5 minutes ago, for about 30 seconds, I thought that we had just signed Hunter Renfrow, but we have not. But we can still get to that. So,
Mike.
Yeah.
How are you feeling about the possibility of them bringing back Renfrow?
Renfrow, I would be ecstatic. I like at first when I saw the report that he's visiting the Raiders, I thought two things. One, free agency is just not the same as it used to be. I remember being in high school and getting Twitter updates about the fact that a player is going to visit a team tonight, right? what would it be? Not breaking news, but what do they say? Not like the first word that a like Adam Schefter would like update or damn. Well, let's just say it's breaking news. Who gives a shit? They tweet breaking news. Uh, Peyton Manning is visiting with the Denver Broncos today, and meeting with the general manager and blah blah blah. We don't get those tweets anymore. You
I feel
know,
like maybe not breaking news, but breaking. They would just say breaking.
breaking or like I feel like there's a specific word they use like update. I don't fucking know, but whatever. My point here though is like I think part of it is the fact that so many, especially key players like the big names, all sign within the legal tampering period when they can't actually visit teams. That there are no tweets about Eric Stokes is visiting the Raiders. He never visited them because he was signed before free agency even opened. You know, but even when players do visit teams, like update, Hunter Renfro is visiting the Raiders today. Cool. The next sentence, he visited the Panthers 4 days ago. Why didn't we hear about that? I would have been elated to be, oh, Hunter Renfro is visiting the Panthers. What? We should, like, I remember, my point is, like, 8 years ago, I remember being in high school and, like, being so intrigued at where players are visiting and, like, God, I hope he visits us next. And nowadays, it's like they visit one team and they're just signed. And it's almost, I don't know if the insiders just don't know where they're visiting anymore or what, but there's just a pet peeve. I remember free agency being so much more fun years ago, and now it's just like probably because of the internet and shit and the agents and the way that they handle things, it's completely different. Um, but also the real aspect of this is Hunter Renfro, which is when I first saw the tweet, I was like, no way. That won't like nah. I thought about it more and I was like, man, I loved Hunter Renfro, man. And I would kill to have him back on this team. And although I think that you'd kind of be not oversaturating the slot position, but just you'd really be having an interesting, I won't call it battle, but like let's just call it let's just call it battle for like slot reps, right? Because I think Trey Tucker is very much looked at as this starter for them. But Hunter Renfro, if he signs, should definitely be getting snaps too. It might be situational, I don't know, but having Geno Smith and you have Brock Bowers, Jacoby Myers, and then you bring in Hunter Renfro, I don't know how much more reliable it gets. And I'll tell you one name. I mean, we'll get to team needs in a little bit here, but like you bring in a Keenan Allen, and it's like you have the most sure-handed wide receiver group in the league, quite possibly. Besides, like I guess the Bengals, maybe the Vikings, the teams with the best receivers in the league, but that would be fantastic for Geno Smith. What do you think?
No, I like Hunter Renfro. I feel like so this past season, Brock Bowers, I mean, he can line up anywhere. He can line up outside. He can line up inside. He can line up in the slot.
Mm-hmm.
How much of lining up in the slot would Brock Bowers do? This past season, Mike. Did they use him a lot there, or was he lined up a lot? Like, just most of the time on the end of
In
the line of
line as a tight
scrimmage.
end?
Yeah.
I think it was mostly both of that, but it wasn't as much outside. Could he be outside? Absolutely. Was he outside? I'm sure he was, but I think most of the time he was probably in the slot
Mm-hmm.
or in line.
Because I feel like Renfro, he could do. He's a very good route runner. I still probably believe that that's his strength is route running on the short routes, and I think that if you can force teams to not focus on Brock Bowers as much, or at least if teams are going to focus on Brock Bowers, you can have a guy like Hunter Renfrow get short gains that, it's just easy yardage.
Yeah. Yeah,
You
I
know?
think, I mean, a minor spoiler for like the team needs, but I think one of their biggest needs right now is a field stretching X receiver. And Hunter Renfrow
Hunter
doesn't fill
Renfrow is
that need.
not that.
Yeah, he's not that. He's the opposite of that. He's a non-field stretching slot receiver.
Yeah.
And Trey Tucker, we can call him a field stretcher, but he's a slot receiver, and also he's not the best at getting separation. He's not the best route runner. So I think, having Renfrow to kind of counter Trey Tucker in the slot sounds like a lot of fun to me. You can have plays where they're both in the field. You could have the plays where neither of them are on the field. Or you can have situational plays where, yep, this play kind of calls for Renfrow, this play calls for Tucker, and I'd be elated to have that. I would still need to see a speedy X receiver brought especially in the draft. I think there are still some free agents out there that you can sign at some point that could fill that need. But Hunter Renfrow would be a lot of fun to bring back. It'd be so cool.
I really don't know what the Raiders are waiting for. I feel like what they could and what they should do is, like you said, they kind of need an X receiver, and Keenan Allen is available. I feel like he would be he would be that tough wide receiver that they could use, similar to what Michael Crabtree provided for them, late in Crabtree's career.
Yeah.
Obviously different players, but they should sign Keenan Allen. They should sign Hunter Renfrow. And then with their sixth pick, potentially, if they want to go the Gianti route, they can. And then now you're cooking with gasoline. Or
suddenly our offense is explosive.
Or if there's a lot of good running backs in the draft, you take an offensive lineman and then you draft a running back, a little bit later in the draft.
Yep. Yeah, I think because our next podcast will be very draft central, I'm not going to spoil what I want, but I'll hint that you just named off two things very high on my list of like what I would do with the 6th overall pick. There are many things they can do, and there are many options that I like, but those are two that are very high on the list because I would say if you look back at last season, what was our biggest problem? The run game.
Running the ball.
Running the football. And I think the emphasis needs to be on fixing that if they want their offense to do anything this year. Because Geno Smith was phase 1 of like, we need a fucking quarterback. We got it. Now we need to fix the run game. And I would still say fill in some spots on defense for sure. I'd like to see some offensive line help in one way or another. We'll get there. But they're getting there in kind of baby steps. But yeah.
Mm-hmm. Papa J asks, how confident are you with Pete Carroll at the helm?
Extremely. Am I confident that they're going to make the playoffs? Hell no. Because this is a process, and seeing the way that Spytech and all of them handled free agency this year, they clearly aren't a team that's like immediately all in. Like I know at the press conferences and whatnot, like they were like, we're going to hit the ground running. Like we're going to compete. Like that's the goal is we are going to go out there and we're going to compete. They didn't say this, but I think the way that it read off to me was we're aiming for the playoffs. That's always what we're going to aim for. We're always aiming for a Super Bowl, whatever you want to call it, But I think luckily the team is run by people, Spytech, Carroll and company, who are wise enough to realize what situation they're in, which is, yeah, we can make a team that can compete, but also we're not winning the Super Bowl this year. So let's not go out there and spend all our money on free agents, but instead focus on setting the foundation, which is Max Crosby, our quarterback, and I guess re-signing the guys that aren't going to break our bank, right? Because there are still other signings to be made, like Geno Smith, in my opinion, Jacoby Myers, Colton Miller. So,
in terms of how confident, or I guess the confidence level, in terms of confidence in the team, that's obviously much lower. There shouldn't be drastically high expectations for the team, but in terms of confidence in the coach or who's in control, I'd say
higher than it's ever been.
I'd say that's just about as high of confidence that you could have in a new coach hire.
Yeah.
Just about as much.
Yeah, the only way that it would be a higher confidence right now is if
they
somehow
had hired Jim Harbaugh instead, right?
No, yeah, I'm not even going to be a smartass, but no. I think I'd say the only guys that compare would be like, obviously this would be way better, but Andy Reid, I really just Super Bowl winning coaches. So Sean Payton, I wouldn't even be more confident right now if our head coach was don't know why I'm forgetting his name, but the Eagles coach.
Sirianni?
Yes, I don't think I'd be more confident right now with Sirianni. I think I might be with Sean McVay. Like, I think the main three would be the three that I mentioned: Andy Reid, Sean Payton, Sean McVay. And
there's something about McVay though. It's just something about him. Like,
maybe it's also the GM matters a lot with him. I think the Rams general manager pulls a lot of weight for them, but I respect McVay highly as a coach and a play caller.
I kind of like Pete Carroll a little bit more than McVay.
Yeah, I would say I respect him more. So yeah, it's a tough one. It's a tough question. As far as comparing him to other coaches, like, there's not many coaches that I respect more and like have utmost confidence in more than Pete Carroll.
So. Yeah. I'd say most of the time when you hire a brand new head coach onto a football team, it's filled with a lot of question marks and a lot of unknown. And I feel like with Pete Carroll, you pretty much know what you're going to get. Like, he's about as experienced as they come in a brand new head coaching hire.
Yep. So, yeah, I like it.
Yep. Do you want to talk about the needs before we get out of here? Or was there anything else that you wanted to mention?
No, we could talk about the needs. I think, honestly, you might as well keep the spreadsheet on the screen while we do this.
All right. The Raiders team needs. You know what they need? They need a win. That's what they need.
Just win.
All right.
So for Raiders team needs, it's hard to like really rank their needs right now. But to me, like, when I look at this roster and I'm asking, like, what is the biggest hole on this team? Like, I think, talking about Devin White, I look at the linebackers and I say, it did get worse in theory. Like, I think Landon Roberts is genuinely a great replacement for Robert Spillane. Like, 1-to-1 right there, and far cheaper. Devin White is a complete question mark. 4 or 5 years ago, I'd be jumping. I'd be attempting a backflip, but his career has somehow just fallen off. to complete unimportance, you know. And like I said, this is very much a prove it deal for him, and similar to a guy like Eric Stokes, which I like. I think there are two guys sitting below Devin White that have potential, albeit very unknown, slight potential. But both of the Amaris, Bernie and Gainer, I think they have the opportunity, or not the opportunity, but the potential to be starting weak side linebackers, will linebackers in this league. I will say one thing that I see when I look at the linebackers is a desperate need for a pass defending linebacker, which does bring me to, of course, now I'm forgetting his name. Was it Caden Ellis? The linebacker they put an offer sheet for. He was a restricted free agent for the Patriots. They put
I don't know.
They put an offer sheet in for the Patriots restricted free agent linebacker, and it was looking like, oh wow, they might get him. And then last second, the Patriots matched the deal. It was a 2-year, like $14 million deal. Like they were willing to put out money for it. And the Patriots, of course, kept him. He would have been a solid will linebacker, pass defending guy that we probably wouldn't have signed Devin White if we had gotten him. And I'd be feeling even better at linebacker right now. You can see by the colors where it says like right defensive end, it's green, inside linebacker, yellow, weak side linebacker, red. The color means something. On the far right, red means it needs a starter and depth. But also you could look at it as like the biggest needs. Yellow, I would say I would still like to see a new starter, or they could certainly upgrade at the starting position. Green needs, it's good. The starter's good, but they need depth at the position. Blue basically means no immediate need. You could still add to the position, but no immediate need. So obviously, Max Crosby, like you get Charles Snowden in there, there's no need there. D tackle with Christian Wilkins, Adam Butler, there's no need there. Tight end, for the love of God. But I think at running back, left guard, weak side linebacker, and I would even add nickel corner. They really need starters. At the bare minimum, they need to find their starters. So if at weak side will linebacker, if it's a 3-way race between Devin White, Amari Burney, Amari Gainer, okay, cool. But you better find a starter out of those three, because if none of those three are worthy starters, we're already losing on defense. Same goes for nickel corner. If they can't find a guy in the draft, and it's just Darnay Holmes, or let's just say Decamerion Richardson. If neither of those guys are like valuable starters, we're already losing. Like they still need to look for guys out there. But the question at hand is their team. The team needs, like, how would I order it? I guess I think the Raiders' biggest team need still is running back, and that might be a hint of how I feel the next time we do a podcast and we're talking about what the Raiders should do in the draft. But there is no chance in hell that the Raiders are walking out week 1 with Raheem Mostert as their starter. There's just no way. And that's no disrespect to Mostert.
It's going to be Sincere McCormick.
Yeah, well, Mostert was a guy who last year couldn't play a full season, and Sincere McCormick got a pretty devastating injury, like, 4 weeks before the season ended? Like, there's no guarantee that McCormick is ready week 1. I saw a TikTok of a guy who is not a Raiders fan giving 3 Raiders who are going to break out next year, and I fucking laughed my ass off because he said, who's the first guy? The first guy was a good one. It was like, oh man, who was it? Damn it. I know he said Malcolm Kuntz, but I swear that was the third guy. Oh, Tyree Wilson. He said Tyree Wilson's going to break out this year. Okay, cool. I hope he's right. The third guy was Malcolm Kuntz. The second guy was Zamir White. Yeah, buddy, Zamir White's not breaking out. He might get cut. Okay? When the Raiders draft 2 running backs in this year's class, he might get cut. unless McCormick starts on IR, then okay, Zamir White RB4. But don't expect Zamir White to magically become the starting running back this year. That shit's not happening. So, point being,
Honestly, I've got a couple Raider breakout guys that I think are going to have good seasons that not nobody's really talking about.
Mhm.
Well,
Hunter
for
Renfro.
for starters, no, I think Max Crosby should probably have a good year. Nobody's really talking about that. I think Brock Bowers will have a good year, and I think Geno Smith might be decent. He'll probably be the starter.
Right.
So I'm glad that I was able to provide excellent insight.
Thank you. Yeah.
Nobody's talking about it.
Yeah. So, continuing my point that actually matters, Raheem Mostert is not going to be the starter for this team. And if he is, you can just shoot me now.
Is that another bet?
No, that's not going to be a bet unless it's like airsoft bullets. Or
Oh,
even better yet, Nerf bullets.
I do have a Nerf gun.
Yeah, I do too. I don't know why that came out weird.
It
But
didn't.
yeah. Okay, good. Well, yeah, it just sounded like weird. Like, anyway, yeah. Raheem Mostert's not the starter. He is the, I'd say at best, number 2 running back. I'd like to see him be the number 3. I don't think that'll happen this year. He's only on a 1-year deal. But they need to draft 2 running backs this year. That's all I'll say. And one of them is going to be the starter, day 1, rookie. I have left guard obviously in red over there. Wide receiver, like I said, I already said it, but they need an X receiver. I still do have a Raiders like wish list of free agents. One notable thing is I know you mentioned Keenan Allen. I want to say it might be June 1st. You know how like there's the post June 1st release? I want to say June 1st is when free agent signings no longer account for the compensatory draft pick formula. So the Raiders might be waiting for that day to start spending some of their money. So if a guy like Keenan Allen is still available on June June 1st, that's when they can give him a solid contract, because it won't matter towards compensatory picks. Same goes for a guy like Amari Cooper. Hunter Renfrow right now does not count against the formula. If they want to sign him, free. They are free to. Elijah Moore, I don't know if he's exactly an X receiver, but he is 24 years old. Like, that's pretty rare to find at this stage of free agency right now. 24-year-old. And then the other guy would be Tyler Lockett, but I kind of view him more as like a slot receiver. Like, I view Hunter Renfrow and Tyler Lockett kind of in the same realm. And currently, I'd rather have Renfrow. Lockett makes a lot of sense with the Geno Smith connection, Pete Carroll, but I don't think you can have both Renfrow and Lockett. And if I'm looking for an X receiver, which I think they should, I'm looking at Keenan Allen and Amari Cooper specifically. I think the most interesting thing right now, especially from tweets that I saw from Vic Tafer today, the most interesting need for this team is on the offensive line. Because a day ago, I was saying left guard, there's nobody at left guard. And now things are a little clearer because Vic Tafer, apparently John Spytek said to, I don't know if it was just the Athletic or a media session or something, but it's not like a video. He said that there is a 4-way competition for the guard spots and center between Jordan Meredith, Jackson Powers Johnson, Dylan Parham, and Alex Kappa. And I'd say the only guy of those 4 that is exclusively at one spot is Alex Kappa at right guard. And I know there was an interview with Spytek and Eddie Pascal on like Raiders.com where Spytech alluded to we have 5 guys now who have starting experience. And one of those guys he specifically named was Alex Kappa. I think there's going to be a fair battle for the guard and center and left guard spots. When I watched the video a couple of days ago, I certainly felt like, oh, he expects Kappa to start, you know? And really,
Yeah, I think the way it'll shake out will probably be slide Dylan Parham to left guard, and then Alex Kappa is going to be your starting right guard, and Powers Johnson's going to be center.
yeah, I certainly expected Powers Johnson center. That's why I have it as blue. Is like no immediate need. We have our center of the future. But then when I saw that tweet from Vic Tafer today, and I think quote tweeting it was Ted Nguyen saying, I'll die on the hill that Jackson Powers Johnson is a guard and Dylan Parham is best suited at center. We have the versatility, and Jordan Meredith can play both. I could see it where it's Jackson Powers Johnson left guard, Dylan Parham at center, and Alex Kappa at right guard. And then Jordan Meredith is the backup for all 3 positions. And you probably draft a guy at both guard or interior and tackle at some point in the draft. And I'm okay with that. The one freaky thing for me is that Dylan Parham has 1 year left on his deal. So if you slide him to center, like for one thing, you're already moving him around, which he's done a little bit in his career, but I don't know if he's ever started at center. I know he coming out of college he was a center, but I don't think he's started at center in a long time. But because he's on 1 year remaining on his deal, it's like if we let him walk next year, then you're starting all over again at center. Like I'd rather just have Powers Johnson just be the center of the future and consistently work with Geno Smith at center. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like that just sounds like just solidify it and let it, continue to grow at that position, and just have battles at the guard spots. And then whoever doesn't win that left guard position between Parham and Meredith, he's the backup guard and center. That makes sense to me. The other thing that I have thought of, again hinting at something that I like in this year's 6th overall pick, potentially. I really like Armand Membou, however you pronounce it, right tackle from Missouri. I could see a situation, especially looking at Spytech and Pete Carroll's history in the draft of really prioritizing offensive tackles. I could see them taking Membou at 6th overall. Everybody's faked out with, the Ashton Gianti hype. Turns out, yeah, the Raiders do think that this running back class is deep, and they take one in the 2nd or 3rd round. He's the starter. Right tackle, 6th overall, day 1 starter, Membou. Guess what? Delmar Glaze, DJ Glaze, he played a little bit of guard in college. Slide him to right guard. Slide Dylan Parham to left guard. And you know what I mean? And then it's Powers Johnson at center, Glaze at right guard, Meredith or Parham at left guard. I would feel so much more comfortable with Membou at right tackle. Tackle the future. It would probably suck for Delmar
And Alex
Glaze,
Kappa would just not start?
Most likely. Or he could battle for left guard. Chances are he's going to battle for a starting spot. So I guess he would battle for left guard. I highly doubt that Glaze goes from right tackle to left guard.
You just seem pretty adamant that Alex Kappa was going to stay at right guard.
Yeah, because that's where he's always played. From what I've seen, I don't think he's moved to left guard very much in his career, if at all. Which tells me, they expect him to be the right guard, which tells me maybe they're not looking at Membou. I don't know. Mm-hmm. And they probably seem confident in DJ Glaze at right tackle. There was a comment made by Spytech today about that towards Vic Tafer of, how do you feel about DJ Glaze right tackle? Well, we feel good about him, but we also have 9 picks or have 8 picks in this draft, so we might draft a tackle, but the big key term this whole offseason, ever since they were hired, was competition. So if they draft somebody, if they sign somebody, expect a competition at that position. So right guard, Parham, Kappa, they're going to compete. And that's probably the best thing they can do. Is just the other big word before these guys got hired that I was saying was continuity. And I'd like to see continuity at center. I'd like to see continuity at guard, tackle, you know. Again, Colton Miller, Dylan Parham, 1 year left on the deals. What's going to happen? I'm probably looking a year ahead. Do I need to? No. But I want the offensive line to be great. If we're going to start running the ball, great. If we possibly draft Ashton Gianti, I don't want him back there behind a shitty offensive line. I don't want our quarterback behind a shitty offensive line. So, again, this whole thing is a process. We'll see what they end up doing in the draft. But as of today, it looks like there's going to be competition at the interior offensive line spots. And that just makes me, think that it's not, blue at center and red at this position. It's, it's more like this, really, because I have no fucking clue what's going to happen. Right?
Yeah.
But because Dylan Parham's got 1 year left in his deal, Meredith's got 1 year left on his, it's like, whatever they do, it's hard to convince myself that there's going to be continuity there. And no matter what, they need to draft linemen. They need to draft linemen. And then on defense, the defensive line is our strong suit right now. I already touched on linebacker. I'd love to see them draft a linebacker at some point. And they need to prioritize corner. They're good at safety. I think they could go the entire draft without drafting a safety for all I care. But they need to prioritize corner along with offensive line and running back and wide receiver. They need an X receiver. But I think of all of those positions, you can actually find a solid receiver in free agency. It's just eventually the time's going to run out. If you scroll down a bit below like the cap space, you can actually see the wish list. Keep going. Right there in the white. I think these are the best available free agents. Down. Yep. Raiders wish list. Asante Samuel Jr. Nickel corner, still available. Mike Hilton, veteran nickel corner out there. Still great options. Rasul Douglas, starting boundary corner, still available. Kaiser White, solid linebacker, even in pass coverage, still available. Again, the receivers, Elijah Moore, 24, going on 25 years old. Keenan Allen, 69 years old. Amari Cooper, 66 years old. But still solid X receivers, specifically Keenan Allen. And then the slot receivers in Renfro and Lockett. You still have some other running back veterans in J.K. Dobbins, Nick Chubb. And then on the offensive line, if they want to throw in one more guy for this competition, this big bad competition, you got guys like Brandon Sheriff and Tristan Colon-Castillo out there. So, and then right there, actually, where you're kind of going up just a little bit more, you can see how I have the team needs in order: running back, corner, linebacker, X receiver, and offensive line. And even though I have offensive line at 5th, it's really because those other 4 positions genuinely need a starter, whereas the offensive line, they might have all the starters on the line right now, but I'd like to see a new starter come in, if not high draft pick depth.
Pretty solid.
That's how I'm
They
feeling.
have some work to do in the draft, but
Yep.
I mean, I would ask you more draft questions on, what you think that they would fill certain holes with, in the NFL draft. But I think we'll probably save that for our next pod, right?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
I think it's been a great pod so far. I want to give a quick shout out to Papa J, to Pia, to Paulina, to Greg, and is there anybody else that tuned in? Well, I know there's more people that tuned in, but anybody else who commented. I just want to say, thank you to all our viewers. I think that tonight was a great episode. We didn't go for 4 hours tonight, which was A plus, but we gave 2.5 solid hours of 49er and Raider content. So, hope everybody has a great rest of the night. Mike, I'm always watching Niner content creators, and at the end of the shows, they go, what do you got going on the rest of the day? I know what you've got going on, but I'm going to ask you anyway. Mike, what do you got going on the rest of the night?
Got a date with this guy right here. It's my pillow. Yeah.
So your pillow's a guy, huh?
I am tired. I don't have a date with a male pillow. I just have a date with a pillow.
Okay.
I'm gonna sleep. Yeah.
You could have just said that.
Yeah, it was really how do you say, a form of speech? I don't fucking know. Like a term.
Hey, I wasn't judging. I was observing, okay?
Yeah. Would have been great.
I mean, it's April Fool's.
It's April Fool's. It would have been great if I just pulled out a blow-up doll. I have a date.
I had a date with
this guy. Yeah.
Oh,
anyways.
man. No, I thought what I thought you were gonna say was it would have been great if there was a hole in this pillow. I'm like, geez.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I think that concludes our stream. I mean, if you want more of this, be sure to like, subscribe, and comment. For more, obviously, more of this, meaning more Niner and Raider content. But yeah, I mean, that's it for us for today. Yeah, everybody get a great night's sleep. If you're working, I'm sorry. Womp, womp, womp.
I know I am.
Anthony C. at the buzzer. Raiders and Niner blow-up dolls. Yep.
Yeah.
I think Anthony C. I'm sorry, because I swear a couple weeks ago you commented that you were listening while you were working. So I'm assuming that you're also doing that right now. So the want. I'm sorry. It wasn't personal. Okay. But,
so, excuse me. Damn. The draft is just a few days over 3 weeks away.
Okay.
If I had to guess, we will have our pre-draft podcast either in 2 or 3 weeks from now.
Mm-hmm.
So either the 14th or 21st, most likely. Probably just depends on how ready I am, because I'm currently in the process of kind of formulating whatever I'm going to do for that podcast as far as prospects to know and stuff. And yeah, and then that week or that following week, it'll be draft day, and I cannot wait.
Yep. I'm also working on moving away from StreamYard and moving over to OBS Studios. So there might be a slight change on the way we approach putting comments on the screen, but we're kind of working through how things are going to look, what the design of the layout's going to be. But I'm thinking that switching away from StreamYard will probably be an upgrade. And, for those of you who are wondering why, it's because StreamYard is, they're really sticking it to the people who, they're sticking it to us. They're just the people who are free members is what I mean to say. They raise their prices of the of their paid memberships, and then also they they cut the stream hours from 20 hours to 5, so we'll find a better way to stream and like upgrade and just do it ourselves.
Basically, we used to have 20 free hours per month to stream, which is perfectly fine for us if we're doing, say, 2 pods a month. Even if they're 5-hour pods, which we almost have done one for 5 hours, somehow we could do that. Now we can't.
You mean 4? You mean it's typically 4 pods a month? You said 2.
Well, I mean, right now in the off season, it's been 2 per month. But yeah, in the regular season, let's say we do 4 4-hour pods, we could fit that in a 20-hour span. Now that it's down to 5 hours, like we have almost hit 5 hours in one pod. We can't do it. So.
Yep. So we just need to. I need to figure that out. I want to probably aim to have that done for the next pod, so that way. I mean, this might be our last pod on StreamYard. I don't know. So if you're in here, everybody like Greg, Papa J, Pia, Paulina, and Anthony C, you guys might have witnessed possibly the last of StreamYard. I don't know. At least for our pod's sake. Anthony says 12-hour nursing shift, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. That's brutal.
Yeah. Get some good sleep. Regardless, we will still be on YouTube under the same account and everything.
So. No, hold on. Anthony, do you mean 7 p.m. to 7 a.m.? You know, because, I mean, I would imagine you started at 7 p.m. and then you're working to 7 a.m. And that's why you're still up working right now. But,
or maybe
I mean, either way, it's 12 hours
tomorrow, or works a later shift tomorrow or something.
Or you know what? The real reason why Anthony said that is because he's got work in the morning, but instead of sleeping, he would rather tune into this podcast because there's no better thing that he would like to do. With that,
there you go.
I hope everybody has a great night, and we'll catch you, like Mike said, in 2 or 3 weeks. It's draft season.